The scene begins an FBI member who is reading the names of the inmates who managed to escape, and that numbered 8 people.
Charles Haywire Potoshik. Operating. Benjamin Miles Frank. Out.
The FBI agent said that Schofield was the main culprit, and he asked for all information about Schofield. Back to the escape. It seems that it is morning and they are still chasing in the forest. They see the train and try to cross to the other side, and the Bellic is seen choosing a different path. Schofield and Sucker were left there and they boarded the carriage. Bellic was waiting for him in front of them and readied his weapons there, but Schofield managed to dodge. They also managed to move to the other side and escape the pursuit. Return to the FBI office. Introduce him to be Agent Mahon, and he will be Schofield's main enemy in Season 2. Scene: Agent Mahon is giving a speech. He said in the last 140 years, the psychology of inmates who manage to escape from prison has never changed. Namely, they will always be restless and in fear. Mahon's agent asked everyone who watched this news to see the faces. They are the 8 most wanted fugitives in America. The escape team managed to escape the arrests of the police. They take a break and Franklin talks about D.B. Cooper's treasure trove.
Wait, what money?
Agent Mahon goes to Pope and asks to tell him about Dr. Sarah. And he asks to speak to her, but Pope refused because Dr. Sarah couldn't say anything this time. The scene changed at the hospital. It looked like Dr. Sarah's condition had improved somewhat now, and now he realized, furthermore. Teabag was seen inserting his severed hand into the cooler box belonging to the person who was camping there, and the owner came out of his tent, but Teabag threatens him not to report to the police and he runs away.
Hey, what do you think?
Agent Mahon is investigating Schofield's tattoos. It must have taken a long time to do the tattoo. Agent Mahon wants to find the person who did the Schofield tattoo. Bellic comes and Mahon invites cooperation, but Bellic is reluctant to cooperate. Agent Mahon underestimated Bellic, and Bellic said, "I would prove it." Veronica, who was at Stedman's house, took a photo of the still living Stedman, but Stedman casually said, "You can do as you please, but you won't be able to get out of here because this door can only be opened from the outside, and the glass here is made bulletproof as thick as 5 centimeters. By the river, Schofield and Burrow talking, discussing the treasure of D.B. Cooper, so they planned to go to Panama and stay there. But before that they had to go to Utah to retrieve the treasure first. But Schofield, now we have the closest destination, which is we're going to get the stuff. Agent Mahon interrogates the woman who got the Schofield tattoo. He said that Schofield's tattoo design was designed by Schofield himself, and not much information he knows. The woman leaves and Agent Mahon notices that the tattoo has English Fitz Percy written on it, and he realized it was a fork in the Fox River prison. Back to the escape team. Suddenly they were accosted by a little girl. The little girl asked them, but his father arrived and pointed his gun there. The father knows that they are fugitives from Fox River. But suddenly a bruisie took the child hostage and threatened back. Finally the father released his gun, and the child is returned. Schofield says he won't hurt him and asks for his car keys. He also gave me the key. Back at the hospital, Dr. Sarah was interrogated there, and he was told that the one who ran away was not only Schofield, but with 7 other people. Dr. Sarah was shocked. Teabag came to a clinic, but the doctor said the clinic was closed, but Teabag asked to operate on his hand. But the doctor did not agree because this is a veterinary clinic. Seeing Teabag, who was exhausted, he tried to call an ambulance, but the Teabag stopped him and pointed a knife at the doctor. The escape team now gets a car and they discuss where to go. Sucker and Franklin want to return to their family, but it was prevented because the police would have been there. Schofield orders to go to Oswego because there is something. The police team reported to Bellic that he received news that a hunter had met the 5 inmates. Agent Mahon comes to Schofield's apartment and he is imagining what Schofield is planning there. And he orders to send a dive team into the river. Back at Stedman's house, Veronica tries to call the police, and Stedman points his gun at Veronica. Bellic went to the hunter's father And he told him what kind of car they had stolen, and he said they were going towards Oswego. At the same time, Bellick gets Schofield's credit card history report. And he sees a transaction where Schofield is renting a garage in Oswego. They immediately went there. Dr. Sarah's nurse colleague visited Dr. Sarah. Dr. Sarah said I was in big trouble, and his colleague apologized to Dr. Sarah for revealing her secret. Dr. Sarah says it's not your fault. Back in the car, Schofield says I did something wrong with Dr. Sarah, and he's worried about it. Veronica knew that Stedman would not dare to shoot her, so she called the police to come to where she was because there was a crime case. Back at the veterinary clinic, the doctor said I'm not an expert to perform surgery, but Teabag threatens him. The doctor was forced to do it, and he will drug Teabag, but Teabag forbid it, because if Teabag is unconscious, he will surely be caught. Teabag also ordered the doctor to operate without anesthesia. FBI agents now believe Schofield's entire tattoo was part of his plan to escape. One of the agents said the police were trying to raid them on a property in Oswego, so they went there. The team fled to a warehouse. The police also seemed to be on standby at the place, and Agent Mahon arrived there. Agent Mahon is thinking about Schofield's tattoo called Ripe Chance Woods. The FBI has searched nowhere in the world that has a name like that. The police also raided and pointed his gun in front of the warehouse. And when they opened the warehouse, they weren't there. It was a different place. Schofield has outwitted the police. Tim escapes, grabs his shovel, and starts digging in a grave. Agent Mahon accidentally saw a policeman named Rivers, and he just realized that Woods could be a name. He asked his colleagues to look for names in the population census even though they had died. The escape team managed to dig up his grave and took the plastic package there. Agent Mahon learns that it is the name of the grave. He immediately went there. The contents of the package was a piece of clothing. They also changed the prisoner's clothes, and Schofield gave him his bag of money and passports there. Suddenly a car came. It was Agent Mahon. Mahon's agent also approached the grave. Schofield wonders how this person knows where they are. They ran away from there. So the meaning of Ripe Chance Woods is, RIP, rest in peace Chance Woods. Agent Mahon saw their tracks and tried to chase him. The team fled to the city and mingled with the people there, and suddenly someone poked Schofield. And it turned out to be just a kid. Agent Mahon also missed their tracks there. Back at Stedman's house, Veronica reports that Stedman is still alive to the borough. Veronica says you don't have to run away anymore. The police came and went in there, but it turned out to be the people.
Mr. Stedman, have you stepped?
The agent pointed his gun at Veronica and Veronica was shot. And she died. Burrow was very sad to hear this. The agents came out with suitcases and bags there, and that is Veronica's mutilated corpse.
I thought you knew that all calls to the local station are routed.
At the hospital, Dr. Sarah checked her bag, and it turned out that there was an origami bird there, and there is a message. What does it mean? Agent Mahon explained to his partner that we will guess where Schofield's next destination will go, sooner or later.
That is in Schofield's hand.
His men said that Fox River Prison asked for updates on the progress of the pursuit. But Agent Mahon said all the police and guards at Fox River were no longer involved. The scene stops at a park. Schofield is reading a newspaper there and he seems to be watching people having a picnic. Moved to the escape team's hideout, seen they were arguing and discussing money issues. DB Cooper in Utah. Schofield returns from the park, and it turns out that the man on the picnic had lost his food. The food has also changed hands to the escape team. Schofield distributes money to his colleagues, which are not much for capital when they separate later. Back at the clinic, the doctor has finished his tea bag operation, and the tea bag's hands look very disgusting. Schofield says we're going to Mexico first, but first we're going to stop by Utah to pick up the treasure. But Burrow said that today is LJ's trial that will determine his sentence. Burrow intends to pick him up. Schofield disagrees because it's not the right time. We have to wait for the police search to subside, but Burrow says there's no time. While he's in the courthouse, it's our chance. Burrow said, I've been to the court many times. Franklin, Sucker, and a Bruzy came over and they said their goodbyes.
Good luck. Adios.
You got that?
Schofield said, tell me what you know about the courthouse. At Fox River Jail, Pope said we're no longer allowed to go after Schofield and the others. All turned over to the FBI, and we are now called to headquarters. To explain this whole mess, the FBI is gathering info on the inmates.
Updated rap sheet on Apolskus. Take a look when you get a chance.
The scene changes to David. Now he has an appearance with his bald hair, and he hit a man. And this is where the hand is fast in action. Schofield and Burrow went to a basement and took the car there. Burrow calls the court and pretends to be the lawyer for the dead Nick, to ask what time LJ's trial is. And now he knows the trial will start at 15:00. At headquarters, Pope and Bellick were interviewed there. They asked why Schofield was in your office and locked you up. I trusted him and he betrayed me, said Pope. Bellick was asked if you sold your position as a worker at Fox River. Clearly, Bellick and Pope denied it. However, the former warden of Fox River jury came there and made a testimony, and finally Bellick confessed that he had sold the job to the Abruzzi workers. They were told to leave to wait for a decision there. Pope was disappointed with what Bellick did. Back at the clinic, the doctor gave medicine to make Teabag feel better. And the doctor asked Teabag to go. But here Teabag says, you are witness of my crime. You have to die. The doctor was finally caught and given a choice to die sooner or later.
If you don't fight, but if you pull a stunt like that.
At the courthouse, LJ is confronted by Agent Mahon, who tries to extract information and made a pact to make a statement on TV for his dad to come back. In exchange, LJ will be given leniency. LJ refused, and Agent Mahon gave him a chance to think. Next, David was waiting in line to buy a ticket for a trip to Utah. When the ticket was about to be prepared, he saw that there were men who suspected him. David, who panicked, immediately left even though he had not finished buying the tickets. Burrow called LJ, and he gave a code there. Burrow claimed he was Nick. And the conversation went on as if LJ was talking to his lawyer. At the end of the conversation, Burrow said that at 3 wary with Otis Wright, but LJ was confused as to what he meant. Schofield came and they went.
Hey, Nick.
Returning to the clinic, the doctor is now bound with the clothes that have been removed, and Teabag also injected him with anesthetic. The doctor fainted, and Teabag's facial expression changed. What would Teabag do to the doctor? Schofield and the Burrow stop at a shop, and the Burrow waits for him outside. But a woman notices him. Schofield also buys his belongings in preparation for taking LJ away, and the woman called the police. The Burrow came in and they ran away from behind, but they couldn't bring the car because there were police there. And Schofield said, what we need is in the car. We'll be back later. David walked to a campus and mingled there. He saw there was a transport announcement and looked for him to hitch a ride to Utah. The head office finally gave its decision that Bellick is now dismissed from his job. Pope, who doesn't accept that, says, I will resign from here.
Day in hell when I turned my back on one of my own men.
Burrow and Schofield have arrived in the courthouse. They climbed the stairs until they reached the rooftop of the building, returned to the clinic and saw the doctor had died there. LJ again called by Agent Mahon, and Agent Mahon said that I recorded your call earlier. Agent Mahon knows that Nick's lawyer has been found dead, and he knew it was Burrow who called. He said to LJ what the meaning of the 3 alerts with Otis Wright. LJ didn't even know that. The roof and Schofield coloring his toy gun. LJ was brought to trial. They arrived at the elevator, and their LJ realized that the 3rd entry was on the 3rd floor. And Otis was the name of the elevator, and Wright was on the right. But what opened was the elevator on the left. LJ pretended to tie his shoelaces, and finally he managed to use the right elevator. However, Mahon's agent realized this and entered the elevator. And suddenly Schofield and Burrow pointed their guns from above. LJ pressed the stop button and took Agent Mahon's gun. The gun was brought by Schofield. When LJ will be lifted up, the toy gun falls and Agent Mahon realizes they won't dare shoot. Agent Mahon defended LJ and pressed the alarm button. Burrow and Schofield also failed in their mission. They ran away. The police tried to catch up, and they fled in the truck they stole. Bellick, who had been fired, finally returned home. His mother comes to him and asks, "Why did you come home?" Bellick said that he was on leave from work. Bellick also saw that there was a gun on his bed. And he heard from his mother that there was a $100,000 reward for every person who caught the Fox River convict alive. At the office, Pope, who has resigned from his position, must pack his things, and he was very annoyed there. And he destroyed the Taj Mahal. Teabag, who had changed clothes, took the doctor's car keys, and the Teabag will take the car to Utah. Returning to David, he met Deborah, a person who wanted to go to Utah, and David was invited to go together using Deborah's car. Police managed to arrest Schofield's truck, but they were no longer there. It turned out that Burrow was in pain because he was shot in the leg while being chased by the police. Agent Mahon realized that the Burrow had been shot and ordered the police to guard every existing hospital.
Get men at all the area hospitals, wherever they are. One of them's bleeding good.
The scene begins at the FBI office, where the assistant agent Mahon is reporting news related to the hospital. They haven't found any patients with gunshot wounds. Introduce her as Felicia. She is the assistant of Agent Mahon. Agent Mahon says the inmates will make mistakes in the first 72 hours, and when they make those mistakes, we will have a chance to catch them. Arriving at Nika's house, Schofield's fake wife, someone's knocking on his house.
I need your help.
Schofield was forced to take him there even though it was very risky. Schofield also treated his wound. Burrow. Schofield said he'd be gone for a while to get his bag back. But when he got there, he lost his car. At the FBI office, the police found a homeless person with a bag, and it turned out that the bag belonged to Schofield. And the police found his passport there. Agent Mahon said it was the first mistake they made. Bellick seems to be buying a drink at the supermarket, and coincidentally he meets Jerry there. Bellick beat him up and they had a fight. But after a while they seem to get along and make peace. Gary here discusses the prize from the person who caught the fugitive Fox River. And finally they decided to work together. Schofield came to where the car was towed and he asked that the car be returned. But he had to pay the price of $84. Schofield paid and waited for his car to be prepared. Agent Mahon interrogates the bum who stole the Schofield backpack. He says took it from a car which is gray, and the man says the car is towed now. Sucker asks his sister how Maricruz is. But she gets shocking news that it turns out that Maricruz will marry his fiancée in 2 days. Then Sucker hastily hung up the phone and stole a car. And here it is, the car. But Schofield is annoyed that his bag isn't there. Dr. Sarah, who has recovered, checks out from the hospital. But when he was about to call a taxi, he was approached by the police and he was arrested. However, it turns out that there is a Kellerman gene that follows him. The towman got a call, and it was from Agent Mahon. Mahon's agent asks if anyone took the gray sedan there. He is a fugitive from the police. Chuck is surprised and tries to tell that Schofield is now in front of him. Agent Mahon orders to buy time until the police come there. However, the suspicious Schofield immediately took the key and immediately fled from there. Agent Mahon, who knew Schofield had fled, was annoyed and dropped his files there, and there was a photo of a man named Shales Oscar. Who is that man? Felicia reports Franklin was found on a payphone in town. Second mistake, Franklin called his wife on a payphone and explained everything. But the conversation was successfully intercepted by the FBI, and Franklin said he had plans to meet at Rainbow Room, a restaurant in New York. Felicia said, and Franklin said in a week he would be waiting for her by the window. But Franklin's wife was still confused whether to go with him or report it. Mahon's agent ordered Felicia to come to his house and ask sincerely about the matter. Agent Mahon ordered his subordinates to distribute the car's license plate to the media. The scene changed. Schofield was changing the car's license plate. Schofield also apologizes for dragging you into bigger trouble. And Schofield said goodbye to Nika. Bellick came to Fox River Prison. He got access because the guards there still care about him even though he no longer works there. And he went into the interrogation room to get info from Sanchez. He threatened if Sanchez didn't tell him he would be tortured in jail. Mistake 3 is a report of a man with traits like Fernando Sucker stealing a car in the Ohio area. Dr. Sarah is now in prison, and her father visits her there and orders Sarah to dodge her. But Dr. Sarah admits what she did. But the governor still asked that you should not say it as it is. You can't just admit your mistakes, because later your father will set you free. And also if you go to jail there will be consequences for our family. Finally, Sarah was forced to obey her father, just so you know that. I will be sworn in as vice president this country next week. Back in Schofield's car, Schofield says we have to watch out for the FBI agents in the elevator. Then Schofield said, "Are you ready for this?" Schofield calls someone but in the mailbox. He also gives a voice message which reads, "Hi, it's me with Burrow. We're headed there." The conversation was intercepted by the FBI, and they reported it to Agent Mahon. Agent Mahon continues to track the signal. We can follow them. Sucker, who is in a hurry to meet her lover, is chased by the police for driving too fast. Finally, he was dismissed, and the policeman asked for vehicle documents. Sucker could only give his driver's license, which was named Miller. Sucker admitted that it was his wife. Police say your license plate is expired. The policeman returned to his motorbike and reported it to the office. So the police haven't realized that Sucker is the most wanted fugitive. Back at Fox River, Bellick says Sanchez has leaked the secret. The scene moves to Franklin. He visits his son at his school, and he pours out his longing for his son. And the son did not hate his father even though he knew that he was a fugitive. Then Franklin told his son to give a message to his mother. If your mother understands the message from father, turn on the porch light at 7 p.m. They separated. Schofield looks at his tattoo which has a barcode and reads 38, and that is the 38th route. Mahon's agent was also seen chasing him. Returning to Sucker. It looks like Sucker is getting more and more panicked, and the police now know that Sucker is a fugitive. But when the police were about to arrest him, Sucker was no longer there. Schofield arrives at their destination, and FBI agents realize they've stopped. Schofield and Burrow unscrewed the bolt on the guardrail and pushed the car. Then they took out a piece of fresh meat. Schofield also prepared another one. It turned out that the radio was a bomb lighter when it was running on channel 103.7. The FBI agent is now having a hard time catching up with the vehicle in front of him, and he puts on the siren. Schofield also dropped his car, and they ran. But something went wrong. The music didn't change, meaning the radio frequency scanner wasn't running. They heard the police sirens getting closer, and the Burrow was forced to go down and change the radio channel manually. And the car exploded. Agent Mahon was happy to see there was an explosion there. Sucker finally arrives at his brother's house and asks where his lover Maricruz is. But his brother said that Maricruz had left for Las Vegas a few hours ago. Sucker saw that there was a motorbike key there. Then he took it and borrowed his brother's antique motorbike. Sucker promised the bike would come back in a pristine condition. His brother also reluctantly lent the motorbike. Dr. Sarah was finally included in the rehabilitation community, and their people talked about her mistakes in the past. And to his surprise, there was Agent Kellerman there undercover.
My name's Lance, and I'm an addict.
Police found the wreckage of the car that Schofield was driving. Then suddenly Agent Mahon delirious with another mysterious man named Oscar Shales. His partner said Oscar Shales was a criminal being chased by Agent Mahon. Agent Mahon looks restless and takes his sedative. Back, Schofield and Burrow were far from the scene, and Schofield said they'd get the results from the lab. But they were already in Mexico by then. Back to Franklin. The time was already 19:00, and it turned out that what Rainbow Room meant was not a restaurant. It was their daughter's bedroom. And it turns out that Franklin's wife turned on the light code. And that means she's going to run off with Franklin. And apparently, Agent Felicia was there to interrogate Franklin's wife. Schofield and Burrow also received an invitation, namely Nika. Nika returns to help Schofield, and they left there. And it turns out they're being watched by Bellick and Gary. Schofield, the oblivious Burrows, and Nika are leaving in the car. And suddenly they had an uninvited guest. And to their surprise, they saw that it was Bellick and Gary. Bellick also crashed his car. And finally their car collided. Bellick said his reunion greetings and pointed a gun. Then he said, "We're going to Utah." So the Bellick was told by Sanchez that the DB Cooper treasure trove was in Utah. The three of them were eventually led to the car. Schofield asks, "Why don't you just go there yourself?"
Hey, don't even think about getting cute, smartass. But he heard enough. Utah and 5 million. You'll fill in the blanks.
Back at the FBI office, the dive team managed to find Schofield's hard drive in the lake, and they've managed to recover 12% of the data so far. They also found news about DB Cooper and Dr. Sarah there. Furthermore, Felicia's agent reported to Mahon's agent that the blood results matched, namely B negative. And Felicia will announce it to the media. However, Mahon's agent forbade it because if he was told to the media, the remaining fugitives would be more wary of the FBI. Because Agent Mahon wants the fugitives to be more alert. Mahon's agent also ordered to do a blood check again no matter what. The scene changes to David. Now he is in a ride to Utah alone with Deborah. There was a news on Fox Rivers wanted fugitive on the radio. And David immediately removed it and distracted Deborah. And seen the police who were on standby on the side of the road. David said don't speed because it would be dangerous to get a ticket. This means that the fees are very expensive. Back to Schofield. Nika is now angry with Schofield. Why did he become involved in this incident? Finally, Nika gets into the car. Burrow was angry with Bellick, but they could not fight because Bellick had a gun. Back to Sarah looks bored-faced listening to stories of other people's mistakes. And now it was Kellerman's turn. He said his name was Lance and his mother had recently died of encephalitis. And Sarah's doctor responds to Agent Kellerman about her encephalitis. The scene moves to New York. Abruzzi is seen entering a kitchen and he arrives in a room where it turns out that Abruzzi has returned to his family. The scene switches to Teabag where he is seen stopping at a gas station. And he goes to the toilet to eat medicine. He checks if his hand works again. And it doesn't. He couldn't even feel the pain there. Suddenly a man caught him and Teabag left. When Teabag came back, it turned out that the police had approached his car and Teabag had to leave from there. Back to Bellick. How unlucky they were. Their car had a flat tire, and Bellick told Gary to walk the 5 miles away to buy new tires. Gary left. Bellick ordered the 3 people out and into an abandoned building, and seen the bickering between Nika and Schofield there.
Keep moving, come on.
Nika, who is annoyed with Schofield, tells Bellick that she wants to destroy Schofield's life. Back at Teabag. The police were asking the people there who the driver of the car was. They don't know anything. Then came Teabag out of the bathroom. The police asked who you were. Teabag says, "I'm just a man on foot who's lost his arm to a bomb during the war."
Which one's your vehicle?
Teabag admits that he is a military man. The police asked who owned the car, and the Teabag said there was a bum in the bathroom and I saw him driving the car. One of the cops checked into the bathroom, and the other cop asked Teabag about his military service, but the police doubt the answer Teabag. But luckily the first policeman took the homeless man and found a car key in his bag. And the midfielder was arrested. Teabag survived because he managed to slander the tramp. Back to Schofield. Now they're being tied up by a Bellick. And Schofield is trying to calm the Burrow. Nika, who betrayed Schofield, tries to cooperate with Bellick in finding the treasure of D.B. Cooper. Nika asked for a share of the $5 million in exchange for her to pretend to be nice to Schofield, and he will dig up information on the whereabouts of his treasure through Schofield. Bellick agreed, but he was only given a ration of $200,000 only. Returning to Abruzzi. His men said that Abruzzi was in D.C., and Abruzzi ordered to bring his car, but his wife, who heard it, slapped Abruzzi and said that was enough to take revenge on Fibonacci, but Abruzzi gave his understanding. His wife understood. Back at David, they were pulled over by the side of the road, and Deborah said she wanted to go to the motel to rest. With a heavy heart, David did it. Back to Schofield. Nika is now back and she is tied with Schofield. When Bellick enters, it turns out that Nika has been playing all this time, acting mad at Schofield. And Nika says, "Where are we going to trap Bellick?" The scene changes. Teabag, who has lost his car, now he must be willing to walk. Suddenly a car approached, and it was the man who had been at the gas station. And this man offered a ride. And how happy Teabag is because this man brought his daughter in the car. The Teabag pedophile soul has reappeared. Back at the Bellick. Nika said that the Burrow will trap the Bellick somewhere in Utah. The Burrow has criminal friends there. Bellick asked where the treasure was. Nika asks he doesn't know yet, but Nika wants to have a new deal. He wants to get a third of the treasure. Bellick agrees, but on the condition that what he gets is not just treasure info, but also Nika. And they agreed. Abruzzi is seen on his way to his revenge mission to Fibonacci. The scene changed. David and Deborah had arrived at the motel. David came back after buying a snack and loudly asked if you had a girlfriend. But even Deborah went into the bathroom. Agent Mahan learned that a fugitive was at the motel and the FBI immediately went there. Back to Dr. Sarah. Now Dr. Sarah and Agent Kellerman are acquainted there and make friends. The scene changes. It seems that Teabag has stopped at the car house of the man who gave him a ride, and his son is seen playing in the water in the pool. Then Teabag makes his seduction and tries to hold the girl. The girl ran to complain to her father, and the father will also give lessons to Teabag.
You and I are gonna work this out.
Nika tries to tease Teabag and tries to take the gun, but he was caught, and Nika's mission failed. He was returned with Schofield and the Burrow. When Bellick turned around, he lost his gun, and it turned out that the Burrow was behind him.
Fooled you.
Gary returns, finished buying tires, and found he was trapped. Gary was tied together with Bellick. Bellick tries to infuriate Schofield, saying because of the escape mission, Dr. Sarah had to overdose.
Neighbors have you, college
And
boy.
now she is facing a prison sentence. Schofield, who just found out about it, told Bellick to keep his mouth shut. Back to the little girl. She saw her father's car there and she saw that it was Teabag driving it. The girl was surprised. It seems that Sarah is getting closer to Kellerman, and suddenly Sarah gets a call and it's from Schofield. Schofield apologizes for what happened, but Dr. Sarah says your apology is useless for what I'm dealing with and I don't care about you anymore. But Schofield said my love for you was real. Very real. Nika seemed to hear the conversation, and she felt jealous. Agent Mahan and the rest of the crew will arrive in 10 minutes to the motel. At the motel, David came out after taking a shower, and Deborah seemed to say he would buy a drink first. Deborah looked nervous, and David was suspicious of her. Did Deborah call the FBI? On the other hand, Abruzzi has arrived at a motel too. The motel where he got the info on Fibonacci's whereabouts. He entered the motel, and there's no one there. And suddenly the FBI had surrounded him there. So it turns out that Agent Mahan went not to David's motel, but the one where he framed Abruzzi. Abruzzi asks who is the traitor. Your men, said Agent Mahan. Mahan says surrender well and you will either go back to Fox River or back to the morgue. Abruzzi was out and he did not want to return to the Fox River, and finally he decided to commit suicide. Abruzzi died. Back at David's motel, Deborah says she's nervous because she's afraid of her fierce father. She's afraid of being caught when she's alone with a guy. They also joked with each other and seemed to be in love with each other. Back in Schofield, Schofield says his last words to Nika and thanks him. They will part at that place. They also hug, and Nika took the gun that Burrow was carrying and pointed it at them. She said, "I love Schofield, but his love is one-sided." Annoyed that Schofield had taken advantage of him, he was about to call the police and get a prize for the competition, but he was embarrassed when Burrow pulled out his removed pistol magazine. Finally, they left Nika in the FBI office. It appears that the FBI blamed the way Agent Mahon caught Abruzzi by trapping him. That way Abruzzi would have been dead. Agent Mahon replies that he is a mafia boss and should be caught that way. Mahon had known that Abruzzi's weakness was Fibonacci, so he gave the bait to lure him out. Smart too. Laboratory blood test reports have been known, and it turns out that the blood is pig blood. Agents beg to praise Schofield's intelligence and compare him to Oscar Shales. So who are these Oscar Shales? The scene begins with Schofield, who is already in the state of Utah. They hear the news on the radio that Abruzzi has been shot dead in Washington, D.C., and tells that there are still 7 other fugitives still at large. Burrow said, "They already knew we were faking death. Wasted our efforts." Schofield said, "Most importantly, we were buying time. They have to go to the KK farm, or we call it Double K, which is another 120 km away." Schofield says, "We can't get to Panama if we don't have DB Cooper's money." Franklin was seen on the train to Utah. He was asked about the ticket, but Franklin, who didn't have a ticket, had a trick that the ticket was broken and didn't know where the torn was, and he was allowed to be on the train until the ticket validation. David finished having sex with Deborah, and suddenly someone knocked on his door, and it turned out to be the police. David, who panicked, immediately went into the bathroom. How surprised Deborah was when the police gave her photo of David, who is a fugitive. But Deborah, who was already in love with David, told the police that she didn't see him. The policeman left, and David explained everything. He's not a criminal, he just stole baseball cards. But Deborah said, "I would go out and left my car keys here. When I return, my car will be lost and later will be found in a faraway place without a driver there." So Deborah let David escape in his car. Finally, Deborah left David. Schofield arrived at Toll. They were planning to finish tonight, and Teabag was already there. At the FBI office, Felicia gave information that a man with characteristics similar to Teabag was found, but Agent Mahon doesn't care, and asking if anyone has any news about Schofield. His subordinates told him that Schofield's hard drive was 60% recovered, and the agent asked to print them all out and put them on his desk. Schofield looked for a KK double farm and couldn't find it. Burrow asked a local resident who had lived as a child, and he said he'd never heard of KK farms. And Schofield said, "We've got to get some data on city properties, and the files are at the town hall." They had to go there even though there were a lot of police on guard. It was seen that David had taken Deborah's car away, and he left his car on the side of the road, cleverly erased his fingerprints, and left a message on Aloha's car window. Agent Kellerman saw the arrival of another agent. Introduce he as Agent Kim. So he will be Schofield's enemy from the company. Agent Kellerman, I'm keeping an eye on Dr. Sarah, and that's our path to finding Schofield. Kim's agent will also tell the news to Mrs. President, so Agent Kim is a presidential guard too. Scene changes to Dr. Sarah. He got a letter that turned out to be an origami bird back, and there was a code number there. What does it mean? Scene changes. Agent Kellerman invites Dr. Sarah to cook and make blueberry pie together. Back at the FBI office, Agent Mahon is nervous and needs a sedative, but the medicine has run out. The scene changes to Teabag in Utah, and he accidentally meets David, and he forced David to join him. David refused but tried to persuade him to come back. Sucker appears in the area near Las Vegas where Maricruz's wedding was, and he tried to call the wedding halls there to find out where Maricruz's wedding venue was.
They got them. Really?
Burrow and Schofield enter the town hall building. When the inspection, Schofield is arrested because he is wearing a metal watch. But the police see a tattoo on Schofield's hand and he suspects it, and they immediately went upstairs. Schofield also found the file, and the double K that is Carl Kakosing.
No.
And when he searched, the page was torn. Turns out someone took it first. And they saw there was a tea bag there. They caught him and asked where the maps are.
I recently had some work done. Where's the map?
Teabag said the maps had now been stolen by David. The scene moves to the governor's office. He gets a call from Sarah, and it's not liked by the people there. Those people said if you want to be vice president, then you have to keep your distance from him. The governor was angry because he had really taken care of his son. Dr. Sarah left a message to her father that he apologized and said he wanted to talk to her about many things. Then suddenly the bell rang and Kellerman came to his house to cook together.
Mind if I check my email?
Back on the train, Franklin borrowed another passenger's laptop. Because he is an ex-military, he still knows the access code of the U.S. military website, and he was looking for a double KK farm. He easily got it. The train attendant came and informed him that the ticket was invalid, and Franklin made an excuse. But the excuse was rejected. The police officers were going to arrest the unticked man on the train. Franklin fled towards the back and recklessly plunged into a lake. Now the FBI knows where Franklin is, and they now know the inmates are heading west. Not Mexico. They wonder what's really going on in the west. Furthermore, Teabag was told to get out of the car and into the trunk. He was locked up there. David bought supplies for digging, so he bought a big shovel. David looked suspicious, and when he was paying for the goods, suddenly the cashier hit him. And he realized that David was a fugitive from Fox River. David passed out and was carried behind him, but not long after that Schofield came to the shop. And the shop owner said the shop was closed. But Schofield is suspicious of the messy things there. He also invited the man. And finally Burrow pointed his gun there. Finally the man gave up. Sucker came to the wedding hall. And he found his sister Maricruz. He asked his sister to be brought to Maricruz because Sucker was the father of Maricruz's son. Maricruz's sister went to Maricruz. Back at Dr. Sarah's house.
Yes?
While they were busy eating, they were surprised by the arrival of the governor there. And the Dr. Sarah came into the room.
Pleasure to meet you, sir. I voted for you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Agent Kellerman took advantage of this by looking for other information about Dr. Sarah. And when he found an origami bird there, he wrote down the number. On the other hand, Dr. Sarah apologizes to her father for tarnishing her good name because of her actions. My father forgave him and their relationship was good again. Kellerman tried to identify the number. Kellerman's agent thought it was a cell phone number, but that number has been inactive for 17 years. Returning to Sucker. There was a knock on his room and apparently it wasn't Maricruz who came, but instead his friend who betrayed him. Sucker said his frustration all this time, and it turns out the sound of police sirens. Sucker has been framed. And Sucker also gave the necklace to Maricruz's sister. He fled on his motorbike. Agent Mahan got a call and he rushed downstairs, and it turned out that he was transacting with someone to buy his drugs that he usually uses. Back at the shop, Burrow threatens David to confess where the map is. And it turns out that David said that you have been lied to by Teabag, and it was true that Teabag had the map and he memorized it and ate it. Finally, Schofield returns to the car and Teabag admits that the map has now moved to his head. Teabag invites them to cooperate. That you are the power and I am the map. They were forced to follow the will of Teabag. The scene shifts to Franklin, who is hot and fetching water from someone's house. And the owner of the house comes out. Franklin reasoned, asked the price of the car for sale. And the mother said it was $40,000. Franklin said I'd buy it in a few days with cash. Sucker, who failed to get Maricruz to escape, he went to Utah and refueled first. At the office, Agent Mahon gets info on Sucker's whereabouts, and after connecting the lines, Agent Mahon finds out they're all looking for DB Cooper's treasure. The Agent Mahon is really smart. Back in the car, we change the naming of the escape team to the treasure team. The treasure team is now directed by T-Bag according to the map he remembers, and when they were near, they walked. The governor was told there was a connection between the Burrow case and Nick's death and Veronica's disappearance, but the governor was forbidden to ask many questions. Agent Mahon prepares himself to go to Utah with the treasure team on a plane. The treasure team was seen climbing the hill there, and they imagined they would buy anything with the money, but they were all shocked when they reached the top.
Clean sheets. Look, steaks, marking.
You see the silo?
They saw that the farm had been turned into a housing complex.
It's gone.
Bastards built over it.
The scene begins with a madman riding a bicycle. We haven't discussed the madman in a long time. It turns out that he is still crazy. He entered a fast food restaurant and took food there. The shop owner came and the madman ran away. The treasure team approached the housing. DB Cooper said the treasure was under the silo, but the silo is now gone. Tyvek trying to remember the map again. T-Bag said the farm is surrounded by trees. Schofield said the age of the tree here is only 1 year old, except for the tree there. T-Bag apologized. He didn't expect that the map had now turned into a housing like this. Agent, please arrive in the state of Utah and visit the FBI branch office there, and the agent please say to prepare the DB Cooper case file 30 years ago ASAP. Back to the treasure team. Schofield said there were 2 trees that grew shorter than the others, meaning he didn't get any sun because there was a building blocking him, and the building is the silo. There used to be a silo there, meaning the treasure team agreed to dig in the garage of the house. The house is inhabited by a middle-aged woman. We call it the Mammy. They parked the car on the outskirts of the housing, and they got out of the car. David is ordered to buy things and refuel the car. The scene shifts to Franklin, who is walking after jumping off the train, and he is now trying to ask for a ride, but how surprised when it comes to Sucker. Sucker stops and they know each other for sure. They both want to find the treasure of DB Cooper. Franklin also invites Sucker to cooperate because he already has his treasure map. FBI agents get word that they've found the madman in the far east of the treasure team's whereabouts. But the agent begs to say leave the madman to the local police. Now the feds will focus on the treasure team. Agent, please get info. DB Cooper bought gas on hijack day, and he immediately went to the gas station. Dr. Sarah got her origami bird message back and tried to call the number, but it didn't connect. Dr. Sarah thought about what the code meant. Scene shifts to Washington, D.C. At the White House, Agent Kellerman talks to Agent Kim. Agent Kim asks for updates on Schofield. Kellerman wanted to meet with the president's mother and tell him directly about Schofield, but Kim's agent didn't allow it. Agent Kim said, from now on, if you want to talk to the president's mother, then you have to talk to me, and you can't be in the White House without my permission. Now your job is only to catch the Burrows. Still at the White House, while the governor is talking to his staff there, he accidentally sees Agent Kellerman there, and the governor remembers it's a friend of Dr. Sarah's. He realized that Sarah's doctor was being spied on. David returned to the store and visited the cashier who was being held captive. When he was preparing his things, suddenly a friend of the cashier came. Suspicious, he called the police, but immediately David beat him with a shovel until he passed out. Back at the estate, Burrow tries to turn off the electricity from his target's house and he succeeds. Long story short, David came and brought all his equipment, but he looked very nervous. Until what happened, he was also scolded by the Burrow. David said he had called the local police, but I don't know if it was connected or not. Finally, Schofield came to the house and disguised himself as an electrician, and Schofield said he would fix the electricity right now without any cost. And the mommy was interested because the officer was a handsome man. The mother agreed.
Right here.
Next, the agent please arrive at the repair shop where DB Cooper used to fill gas. And he interrogates the person who served DB Cooper 30 years ago to refuel his car. He was told that DB Cooper refueled at the place twice, at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Agent please arrive at the office and calculate where DB Cooper hid the loot, and he predicts a radius of 64 miles from where DB Cooper refueled. And the agent's guess please be correct, Tull is in that radius. Back to the treasure team. Schofield said that the broken power line was under the garage. They had to dig, but they guarantee the repair costs are fully covered by the company and recoat the cement. They promise to fix it today too. Schofield ordered the mommy to come in because the room would be very noisy. They did the digging. David came in and he said we had guests. And it turned out to be Franklin and Sucker. Fox River's fugitive team reunites there. Scoville doesn't agree with Sucker and Franklin's existence, as that would break their cover. But Franklin threatens to divulge it. Schofield was forced to let them. The mother came and said who they are. Schofield replied that it was an additional team so that the work was quickly completed. The mother believed it and left from there. David says we can't work like that. Mommy always comes back to the garage. Finally, Teabag also proposes to keep Mom busy. Schofield warns Teabag not to do anything wrong. The madman entered a house and there was a blind grandmother who was a little deaf and said, "Are you my son Willie?" The madman said he, back at the housing estate. The happy mommy asked Teabag for a drink and finally Teabag teased him. And the mommy was tempted.
Can't join me?
In the garage you can see the dig is already underway. Schofield says to Sucker if you have any problems go to the EuropeanGoldPins.net site. But that website we will communicate. That's a safe website for us. Burrow gets something and that is the foundation of the silo. But David said I forgot to fill the car with gas. And Schofield ordered him to fill it up right away. Schofield won't fill up with $5 million in the trunk. Looks like the mommy really enjoys her seduction Teabag. Back to the madman. The grandmother who believed it was her child. She gave the madman some food and the madman asked the painting what was it. The grandmother replied that it was a view in the Netherlands and it was a very beautiful place. Even the madman wanted to go there. And when the grandmother held the hand of the madman, she was shocked and realized that it was not her child, because his son had no hands. The madman went to the kitchen and the grandmother immediately called 911, but the madman came back with a knife. Agent Mahon arrives at the digging equipment store, and Agent Mahon becomes suspicious of the closed shop with bloodstains in it. He also barged in and found the cashier being held captive. The cashier immediately said that the fugitive Fox River was here, back to the house that the madman visited. The police managed to get in and it turns out that the grandmother is not dead. She is fine and the knife that the madman brought was to tear the Dutch painting and steal it. Back to housing. Teabag tells his past with his ex and is replied by the mother who tells him that she is a widow and tells her story that now she is lonely. Mommy seduced the Teabag to go to her room but not the Teabag that would accompany her. Mommy wanted the Burrow to accompany her in the room. Can you seduce Burrow for me, Teabag? Teabag is annoyed to hear that. So all this time he was only a stepping stone for the mommy. The scene changes to Sarah who is at the supermarket. She gets a call from her father saying you should stay away from Lance. He is lying about his identity. But when the father had not finished speaking, suddenly Agent Kellerman had arrived in front of him and Sarah hung up the phone. David arrived at the gas station and asked to be filled with gas, but the man said you have to wait. David was annoyed that he was in a hurry. He also realized that the cashier already knew that he was a fugitive from Fox River. David ran away from there, but the FBI had come and chased. David was finally caught. Back to the treasure team. Schofield checks the condition of the tea bag and the mummy. It turns out to find fragments of ice cubes there. Schofield was suspicious. He immediately went upstairs. And it turned out that the mommy was fine. The mommy says, "You guys are done, you have to go right now." Sucker hears the sound of a car and checks out. He is surprised because there are already police there. Schofield and Teabag also know that the police are coming and immediately take the mommy hostage. It begins with the mother being threatened by a tea bag, and a policewoman is seen entering her house. And she says, "Is Mama at home?" It turned out that the policewoman was the mother's son. The policewoman felt that something was wrong, and he went upstairs to get his gun ready. The mother screamed, and the policewoman approached and immediately pointed her gun at them. But Sucker came, but managed to be elbowed. Then Burrow managed to beat the policewoman. The scene changes to Agent Mahon in Toole prison. He says that we have to find a house where the treasure of D.B. Cooper is. And we have David, he is the one who will show us the way. Back at the supermarket, Kellerman invites Dr. Sarah to talk. But Dr. Sarah, who already knew that his friend was in disguise, he was indifferent to him, and Sarah left him. Back to the treasure team. Mammy and policewoman are now being held captive, and Schofield says it's not going well. Schofield apologizes to both ladies. "We're leaving in 2 hours, and I promise you guys won't get hurt." Sucker and Teabag stand guard and the others continue digging. The scene changes. Kellerman's agent informs that Sarah's doctor doesn't believe her now. And Agent Kim says we're looking for another way to find the Burrow, namely through his son. Sarah finally went to her father's office and asked her father's friend Bruce, "Where is the governor?" Bruce replies he'll be home soon. Somehow he feels like he's been canceled for vice president.
It just happened. According to them, his confirmation was going to be a problem.
Sarah was surprised to hear that and asked how often it happens in politics. Bruce replies it never happened except today. Back to the treasure team. Burrow, Schofield, and Franklin dig, and a tea bag with only one hand actually moved used magazines there. Franklin was angry with him. Burrow reminded that David had not returned either. It took too long to refuel. Returning to Agent Mahon. It appears that he is trying to interrogate David to tell him where the treasure team is. Agent Mahon asks, "Are you Catholic, David? It must be very difficult if you have many sins. But you can atone for them by way of a confession." David was reluctant to tell.
Guess it's letting it out.
Agent Mahon told the Oscar Shales story that he never told anyone. The man who was chased years ago, and so good at always getting away with it. Many victims were killed by him because he had not been caught. Mahon's agent felt it was his fault. So he always thought about the sin. He also needed drugs to calm himself down. Then Agent Mahon gave me the photos of the vets that Teabag killed, and said if you don't tell them their location, there will be more victims. David pondered. The scene changed to LJ's prison. He was called because his lawyer came to visit. LJ was confused because he didn't have a lawyer anymore, and he went into a room and found a man in a neat suit there, and he says, "I came here to give your release paper."
I'm here to serve you.
How surprised he was when he saw his father had hanged himself, and now the governor is dead. Back to the treasure team. The policewoman said something. She said she needed the pills. The policewoman was pregnant.
"I need my pills."
Hearing that, Sucker took it and gave the medicine. The policewoman said, "You look like a nice guy." Sucker said, "I'm not a good person." In the garage, they were shocked by the news that LJ's charges had now been withdrawn and he would be released the same day. Hearing this, Burrow immediately went to pick up LJ. Schofield stopped him, but the Burrow would go anyway. Returning to David, he also contemplated the photos of his victims' tea bag. At the FBI office, they got word that the madman had stolen the house by taking a painting worth $10. Back to the madman. Now he was in a shop and took things there. He ran away without paying first.
Hey!
Burrow took the owner's car keys and said goodbye to Schofield. They said that they would meet again at the place as planned, which was Bolshoi Booze at 18.00 in 3 days, and they said goodbye. The scene changes to the governor's residence. Sarah was notified that there was none marks of murder on the governor. Sarah did not believe at all that her father committed suicide. Now Dr. Sarah lives alone because she is an only child and her mother has died. Then he accidentally found a key with the Crown logo there. What key is it? Back to David. Agent Mahon makes his final offer if David wants to divulge the whereabouts of the treasure team. Then he will be placed in a prison with good facilities and only imprisoned for 4 years. Finally, David spoke up. There is a woman in that house. If you appear suddenly, then that woman will become hostage by Teabag and he can kill her. There has to be someone they can trust in order to get out, which is me. I'll show you the house. Mahon's agent also agreed with David's plan. The madman, who was tired of running, saw there was a boat there, and he got on it, but the shop owner's dog continued to approach him. He threw things and the dog ate the jerky that fell. The madman looked happy. The scene changes. The policewoman asks, what is your reason for escaping from prison? And she finds out that it turns out that she ran away because she wanted to meet her lover. Suddenly it was heard in handy-talkie that David had been arrested by members of the FBI. In the garage, Franklin, who was annoyed with Teabag's refusal to dig, finally got into a fight. Sucker comes and says we have to leave right now as David has been arrested. But apparently Franklin found something there. It turns out that the treasure of D.B. Cooper is indeed true. David immediately left for Agent Mahon, and he had a microphone attached to his body just in case. He arrived at the beach and he prepared his equipment. It seemed that he was already familiar with the dog, and he was really going to the Netherlands on that ship. Back in the garage, the treasure team immediately took the money, but the money fell scattered, and they rushed to pick it back up. But suddenly they heard the sound of a car coming. David arrived at the residence, and he tried to ring the doorbell and open the door. But it turned out that what came out was Deborah.
No, you can't help me.
So David lied to Mahon's agent. David had no intention of telling the team the position of the escape. He instead wanted to meet his girlfriend Deborah. David also made a confession to Deborah and said what happened, and he said that he loved him.
Okay, thanks.
Romantic. Professed love with the background of the FBI. The FBI also caught him. Deborah smiled and Agent Mahon looked embarrassed. It turned out that the one who came to Mama's house, it was his neighbor, and he tried to enter but was prevented by Schofield and said that Mammy was not at the neighbor's house and left. Schofield returned to the garage and immediately helped put the money in a backpack. Arrested, David says to Agent Mahon, "You really feel relieved after admitting it," and apologizes for toying with you. But Agent Mahon just silent and stopped the car. He got out of his car. Burrow seemed to go full speed to pick up his son.
Yo, what's up?
Kellerman is on the phone with Agent Kim and says we're going to arrest Burrow tomorrow. When LJ is released, he'll definitely show up. And Kim said that the governor was a threat from the president, so he had to die. And his daughter Sarah had to die too. Kellerman did not agree. Dr. Sarah went back to her apartment, and she got her origami bird letter back, but he put it down first and fell. He was surprised that there were drugs, morphine, along with the syringe there. And it looks like someone has entered the room. The policewoman tried to provoke Sucker's anger about the reason for her escape, and Sucker was so angry that she pointed a gun at him. Schofield yells and calls Sucker it's time to go. The treasure team has managed to put the money in the bag. And Teabag jokes, here's $5,000 for you to tip the parking attendant. An emotional Sucker pointed her gun at the others and said, leave the money to me. Back to Agent Mahon. He said, I lied to you about Oscar Shales. He didn't run away. I was the one who killed him. Right in the neck. And Agent Mahon would repeat it again. He shot David mercilessly. and David died instantly. Agent Mahon put his gun into David's hand, so as if it was a form of resistance. The restless Agent Mahon ate the medicine again,